Hello, my name is Maryann Achigbue and welcome to Tales Detail, a podcast where we discuss folklore in digital media. Today, we all know that stories that once lived only in whispers decades ago now live in algorithms. From the glass slipper of Cinderella to the echo of heels in a dark boarding school corridor, folklore has always been part of how we understand fear, hope, and identity. But today, these stories don't just belong to us anymore. They stream, they sell, they trend. A horrible school teacher who traumatized me as a kid doesn't just get more attention than I do, but also makes more money than me. So here's the question: when digital media and now artificial intelligence transforms folklore into content, are stories being preserved or quietly replaced? Before we get into platforms and profits, let's ground this. Folklore isn't just old stories, it's living culture. Stories like Cinderella are known as fairy tales passed down across generations, evolving with each retelling. Then you have something like Madame Koi Koi, a contemporary urban legend deeply rooted in Nigerian boarding school culture. This wasn't written in books, it was experienced, shared, and felt. Folklore is collective, it is fluid, owned by communities, not individuals. And that's exactly what makes it so powerful, yet so vulnerable. Let's start with Cinderella. Originally, it wasn't one story. It existed in multiple platforms, each version slightly different, some darker, some more violent, and some a bit more complex. Then came mass media and eventually corporations. What was once a flexible, evolving narrative became a fixed, recognizable brand. A single version dominates globally. The story becomes simplified, romanticized, marketable, and suddenly folklore is no longer just culture, it is a product. I remember growing up as a kid, I used to have a bag that had Cinderella pictures on it. It's the bags, it's the dresses, it's the dolls, the theme parks, and the films. This is what we call commodification when culture is turned into something that can be packaged and sold. And here's the tension. Yes, the story is preserved. Everyone knows Cinderella, but at what cost? What happens to the versions that we no longer hear? Now, let's shift to Madame Koi Koi. If you went to a Nigerian boarding school, you probably know the story. The clicking heels in an empty corridor, the rule, don't look back. And I think even at the time growing up when I was in year 7 in boarding school, I would hear of other rules such as do not look into the bathroom mirror when you use the bathroom. You have to walk carefully and not make a noise. Stories and rules like that. This wasn't just a story, it was a shared experience. I had my own fair share. But today, Madame Coco is changing. She's appearing in films, in TikTok horror skits, in online storytelling threads. And this is where it gets interesting. Unlike Cinderella, though, she hasn't fully become a global commodity yet. She exists in a transitional space, still rooted in culture, but increasingly shaped by digital media. The fear becomes performative or it becomes a performance. The experience becomes content. So again, we ask, is this preserving the story or slowly transforming it into something else? To understand this shift, we need to talk about participatory culture. This idea suggests that audiences don't just consume stories, they create, they remix them, and they also share them. And honestly, folklore has always worked like this. Every time someone retold Cinderella, they changed it. Every time a student shared a story of Madame Koi Koi, they added something new. But digital media takes this to another level. Think about creepypasta, online horror stories like Slender Man. These weren't passed down in classrooms, they were created in forums, edited, reposted, and expanded. Thousands of people contributing to one evolving myth. Now, compare that to Madame Coco. She didn't start online, but now she's entering that same space, which means more people can access the story. More people can also reshape it, distort it, and even detach it from its origin. Participation increases, but so does fragmentation. Now, let's talk about power, because not all participation is equal. When large media corporations step in, they don't just retell stories, they standardize them and monetize them. Platforms like major film studios and streaming services like Netflix take folklore and turn it to franchises, intellectual property, global entertainment. And here's the issue: who profits from these stories and who gets left out? When folklore becomes a product, cultural nuance is often simplified. Stories are shaped to fit market demands, and local voices might be overshadowed. So, yes, these corporations help preserve stories, but they also control how those stories are told. And that's where displacement begins. Not disappearance, but transformation into something more profitable than personal. But you know what is even interesting? Artificial intelligence. That's the new media right now. If digital media transformed folklore, AI accelerates that transformation by 1,000%. AI can generate endless versions of stories, remix narrative instantly, remove the need for even a human storyteller altogether, all by just a simple prompt. Imagine thousands of AI generated Cinderella stories or endless variations of Madame Coco stripped of cultural context. At this point, stories become not memories, not traditions, but data, and this is where the tension peaks. AI preserves stories by replicating them endlessly, but in doing so, it risks detaching them from the people and cultures that gave them meaning. So, are our stories being saved or displaced? The answer isn't simple. Digital media, AI, yes, it does preserve folklore. It keeps stories alive, visible, and accessible, but at the same time, it transforms them, it standardizes them, and also commodifies them. Sometimes in the process, it distances them from their roots. Maybe the real question isn't whether stories survive, but whether they still belong to us. Because when stories move from whispers to screens to algorithms, we have to ask, who is telling them now? Thank you for listening to this podcast. I'll see you in my next episode. Bye for now. Tales Detail.